November 22nd, 1995, just days before Thanksgiving. A 911 call shattered the stillness of a Brooklyn neighborhood. A little girl, unconscious, not breathing. When paramedics arrived, they found the girl lying on the floor, her small body bruised, broken, barely recognizable as a child who once laughed, played, and dreamed. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was already too late, described by authorities as the worst case of child abuse they had ever seen. This is the horrifying case of Elisa Izquierdo. Elisa Izquierdo was born on February 11, 1989, in Brooklyn, New York. Her father, Gustavo Izquierdo, was a Cuban immigrant who had emigrated to the United States. Her mother, Awilda Lopez, was of Puerto Rican descent. The couple met at a Fort Greene homeless shelter, where Gustavo worked part-time as a cleaner and caterer. Awilda herself was a temporary resident at the shelter, where she shared an apartment with a man with whom she had 2 children, but their relationship ended as Awilda was reported to be a drug addict. Gustavo and Awilda soon began a temporary relationship, but they soon drifted apart when Gustavo discovered Awilda was a regular user of cocaine while being pregnant with his child. Concerned by her own family with her extensive usage of drugs, Awilda lost the custody of her 2 eldest children, Rubencino and Casey, which she had with Ruben Rivera, to her own family. When Elisa was born, social workers stated to the city's Child Welfare Administration services that the child was born addicted to cocaine. As a result of her mother's evident addiction, full custody of Elisa was awarded to her father, Gustavo, who, despite having no prior parenting experience, was by all accounts a doting, caring father to Elisa. Meanwhile, Awilda was trying to get her life on track. By 1990, she had successfully beaten her addiction, had secured permanent accommodation, and had married a maintenance worker named Carlos Lopez, with whom she had her 4th child. She also regained custody of her 2 oldest children. In November 1991, she secured the right to obtain unsupervised visitation rights to Elisa. This ruling awarded her custody of the child every second weekend. However, both Elisa's father and her teachers noted the child bore bruising and other signs of physical mistreatment when she returned from these unsupervised visits. One of the locations of these injuries was Elisa's privates, and the child did reveal that her mother had repeatedly hit her and locked her in a closet, adding that she had no desire to see her mother again. Her father also noted that Elisa had begun bedwetting in addition to losing control of her bowels, and would regularly experience nightmares upon learning she was to be in the custody of her mother for even short periods of time. Another family acquaintance noted that Elisa would always vomit upon her return from these visits to her mother and refuse to enter bathrooms. Both Gustavo Izquierdo and Elisa's teachers did inform authorities of the abuse Elisa was enduring at the hands of her mother and stepfather. However, the courts ruled that the visitation rights could continue, but with the conditions that Awilda must not strike or otherwise harm her daughter. In 1993, Gustavo Izquierdo formed plans to relocate with Elisa to his native Cuba. However, in May, Gustavo was admitted to hospital with acute respiratory complications. Gustavo Izquierdo died on May 26th, the same date he had planned to travel to Cuba with Elisa. Upon hearing news of Gustavo's death, Awilda applied for full, permanent custody of Elisa. but the director of Elisa's school, Phyllis Bryce, contacted a family court judge to express the grave concerns of both herself and numerous members of the school staff as to the child's safety should her mother gain custody of her. Awilda was awarded with temporary custody, but upon hearing the initial awarding of Elisa's temporary custody to Awilda Lopez, Elsa Canizares, the cousin of Gustavo and Elisa, challenged the ruling and herself applied for custody of Elisa, citing the documented abuse Elisa had previously endured. But in September 1994, Awilda Lopez's application to obtain permanent custody of Elisa was approved. Upon being awarded full custody of her daughter, Awilda withdrew Elisa from the private school she had been attending and enrolled her in Manhattan's public school 126, where Elisa was quickly observed to be withdrawn, emotionally disturbed, uncommunicative, and to urinate frequently. The principal of this school also noted that Elisa bore numerous bruises, walked with apparent difficulty, and had evidently begun tearing out sections of her hair. On March 14, 1995, an anonymous letter was posted to the Manhattan Child Welfare Authorities. The author of this letter stated that Awilda Lopez had cut off much of Elisa's hair and had begun locking her in a dark room for extensive periods of time. 6 days later, Elisa was admitted to hospital with a fractured shoulder, the injury having been untreated for 3 days. The increasing concerns of staff at Public School 126 regarding evident abuse were also reported to the Manhattan Child Welfare Authorities. Reportedly, the Manhattan Child Welfare Authorities soon replied to the school that their concerns were not reportable due to a lack of direct evidence of child abuse or neglect. Awilda, by this time known to have reverted to regular crack cocaine use, and soon withdrew Elisa from public school. She made no effort to enroll Elisa in any other school after that. After withdrawing her from her school, Elisa was locked in her bedroom, was denied any opportunity to socialize with her siblings or to leave the apartment, and was denied access to the toilet, being forced to use a chamber pot. Some neighbors noted that Awilda would refer to Elisa as a mongoloid and a filthy little whore who had been placed under a spell by her father. According to Elisa's siblings, she was repeatedly punched and kicked by her mother and stepfather. She was forced to eat her own feces or drink ammoniated water. She was forced to mop the floor with her head and face. Awilda would inflict burns upon the head, face, lips, and body. He would get SED with a hairbrush or toothbrush, hanging her from a shower rod for the purpose of entertainment, and dropping a chest of drawers on her ring finger and toe. Awilda's partner, Carlos Lopez, would also repeatedly physically abuse and neglect Elisa and her 2 older siblings. On November 15th, Carlos Lopez was jailed in relation to a violation of parole. 7 days later, on the evening of November 22nd, Awilda phoned one of her sisters, Mercy Torres, to report that Elisa was like retarded on the bed, with fluid leaking from her nose and mouth. In addition, Lopez informed her sister that Elisa would not eat or drink. When Mrs. Torres insisted Awilda take Elisa to the hospital, Awilda replied she would think about it after she had finished cleaning the dishes. The following morning, Awilda contacted a neighbor, whom she invited to view Elisa's condition. But to her shock, Elisa was no more, and the substance leaking from her nose and mouth was brain fluid. The neighbor told Awilda to call the police, which she refused to do. In response, this neighbor immediately called police and an ambulance as Awilda threatened to commit suicide. But after much hassle, Awilda was finally taken into custody. In custody, Awilda initially confessed to having thrown Elisa headfirst into a concrete wall 2 days prior to her contacting her neighbor, adding that Elisa had neither talked nor walked after this incident. A subsequent autopsy revealed that Elisa had numerous injuries, including broken fingers, one bone of which was protruding through the skin, a broken toe, damage to internal organs, and deep welts and burns across her head, face, and body. In addition, her private also bore evidence of trauma, including tearing, this proving that the injuries had been sustained over a prolonged period of time. On June 25, 1996, Awilda Lopez pleaded guilty to the second-degree murder of her daughter and was sentenced to a term of 15 years to life imprisonment. But in April 2022, she was released from Taconic Correctional Facility in New York. Carlos Lopez, Elisa's stepfather, was sentenced to serve between 1.5 and 3 years in prison, to run consecutive with the sentence he was serving at the time of Elisa's death. Elisa's 5 siblings were raised in separate foster homes. Reportedly, all suffered acute psychological trauma due to the acts of extreme physical, mental, and sexual abuse they had been forced to witness inflicted upon their sister. Today, Elisa is remembered not just as a victim, but as a symbol, a reminder of what happens when warnings are ignored, systems failed, and voices go unheard. She loved simple things, playing, smiling, being a child, things she was never allowed to fully experience. And it just boils my blood knowing the fact that Awilda was let off so easily and is free, while the pleas and screams of that innocent soul still echo in the silence, unheard, unanswered, and forever haunting a world that failed to protect her.